What happens when two powerhouse women in music collide on live television in a way nobody saw coming? Well, buckle up because what you're about to hear went down between Gloria Estefan and Kelly Clarkson, and it's going to leave you absolutely speechless. Before we dive into this wild ride, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because this story is about to get intense. It started out like any other episode of the Kelly Clarkson Show. The audience was buzzing with excitement, cameras were rolling, and Kelly had that signature warm smile plastered across her face as she prepared to welcome her guest. Gloria Estefan, the Cuban-American superstar who had conquered both English and Spanish-speaking markets, was scheduled to appear for what seemed like a routine promotional interview. The network had built it as a celebration of Gloria's decades-long career and her upcoming projects. Kelly opened the segment with her usual enthusiastic energy. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the incredible Gloria Es." The crowd erupted in applause as Gloria walked onto the stage, waving graciously to the audience. She settled into the guest chair, and for those first few moments, everything seemed perfectly normal. "Gloria, it's so wonderful to have you here," Kelly began, leaning forward with genuine excitement. "Your influence on music, especially in bringing Latin sounds to mainstream America, has been absolutely revolutionary. I mean, songs like conga and rhythm is going to get you literally change the landscape of pop music." Gloria smiled politely, though something in her expression seemed slightly reserved. "Thank you, Kelly. It's been quite a journey, that's for sure." Kelly continued, clearly prepared with her talking points. "And speaking of that journey, I have to ask about your accident back in the day. The way you came back from that tour bus crash, it was truly inspiring. I can't imagine the strength it took to not only recover physically, but to get back on stage and continue performing at such a high level." This is where things started to shift. Gloria's smile faltered just slightly, and she shifted in her chair. "Well, yes, it was certainly a challenging time in my life. I read that you had to relearn how to walk, and then you came back stronger than ever." Kelly pressed on, seemingly unaware of the subtle change in Gloria's demeanor. "That kind of resilience is just incredible. How did you find the motivation to push through all of that pain and uncertainty?" Gloria's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Kelly, I appreciate the sentiment, but I think there might be some misconceptions there." Kelly looked confused, glancing quickly at her notes. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did I get something wrong? I thought you had said in previous interviews that the recovery process was about finding inner strength and using music as healing." "That's not exactly what I said," Gloria replied, her voice taking on a cooler tone. "And frankly, I'm a bit tired of that narrative being simplified and romanticized. Recovery isn't some beautiful, inspiring journey that makes for good television sound bites." The audience could sense the tension building, though many probably couldn't pinpoint exactly what was happening. Kelly's smile remained, but there was now uncertainty behind her eyes. "I certainly didn't mean to oversimplify your experience, Gloria. I was just trying to highlight your incredible strength." "But that's exactly the problem," Gloria said, her voice gaining intensity. "Everyone wants to turn trauma into some kind of motivational poster. The reality is messy. It's painful, and it's not always inspiring. Sometimes it's just surviving." Kelly tried to pivot, clearly sensing she had struck a nerve. "You're absolutely right, and I apologize if I came across as insensitive. Let's talk about your music instead. Your latest project has been getting amazing reviews." But Gloria wasn't ready to let it go. "No, Kelly, let's not just move on. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment things get real, the moment someone pushes back against a neat little narrative, everyone wants to change the subject." The camera operators continued filming, but you could feel the energy in the studio shift dramatically. The audience sat in uncomfortable silence, unsure whether they were witnessing a genuine moment of tension or if this was somehow part of the planned interview. Kelly, to her credit, tried to maintain her composure. "Gloria, I really don't want you to feel uncomfortable. If there's something specific that's bothering you about how your story has been told, I'd love to give you the platform to set the record straight." "Would you really?" Gloria challenged, leaning forward in her chair. "Because in my experience, talk shows want the inspiring comeback story, not the truth about what it actually costs a person to rebuild their life after it's been shattered." The tension was now palpable throughout the studio. Kelly's producer could be seen in the background making subtle hand gestures, though it wasn't clear if they were signaling to continue or to wrap up the segment. "I think I would." "Yes," Kelly responded, though there was now a hesitation. Kelly took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain control of the interview. Gloria, I understand that you've probably had experiences where people have exploited your story, but that's not what I'm trying to do here. I genuinely respect what you've been through. Do you, though? Gloria shot back, her eyes flashing with intensity. Because 5 minutes ago, you were talking about my accident like it was some kind of triumph of the human spirit fairy tale. You had it all scripted out in your head before I even sat down. The camera caught Kelly's face as it flushed slightly red. I prepare for my interviews. Yes, I research my guests because I want to ask meaningful questions. I don't think that's a bad thing. Meaningful questions? Gloria's voice rose just enough for everyone in the studio to notice. Kelly, you asked me about relearning to walk like it was some kind of uplifting montage from a sports movie. There was nothing meaningful about reducing the worst period of my life to inspiration entertainment. Kelly's hands moved nervously as she tried to find her footing in this increasingly hostile exchange. I wasn't trying to reduce anything, Gloria. I was trying to acknowledge your strength. But whose version of strength? Gloria pressed. The version that makes everyone else feel better about their own problems? The version that says, if you just believe in yourself and work hard enough, everything will magically work out? The audience was witnessing something they had never seen on daytime television before. This wasn't a scripted moment of vulnerability or a planned emotional revelation. This was raw, unfiltered conflict between two successful women who clearly had very different perspectives on how stories should be told. Kelly's voice took on a slightly sharper edge. Gloria, I understand you're upset, but I think you're attributing motives to me that simply aren't there. I've never tried to minimize anyone's pain or suggest that recovery is easy, haven't you, though? Because that's exactly what happens every time someone asks about my accident and then expects me to deliver some profound lessons about perseverance. It turns real suffering into a commodity. That's not fair, Kelly said. And for the first time, there was genuine irritation in her voice. I've shared my own struggles on this show. I've talked about my divorce, about body image issues, about the pressure in this industry. I don't treat pain as entertainment. Gloria leaned back in her chair, studying Kelly with a calculating expression. Oh, so now we're comparing traumas. Is that how this works? You think because you've been vulnerable on television, that gives you permission to mind everyone else's experiences for content. The tension in the studio was becoming almost unbearable. You could see audience members shifting uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether they should be watching this unfold or if they were intruding on something too personal. Kelly's composure finally began to crack completely. You know what, Gloria? I invited you here to celebrate your career and your music. If talking about your life experiences feels exploitative to you, then maybe we should focus on something else. But don't sit there and attack my integrity as a host. Integrity. Gloria's eyebrows shot up. Kelly, your entire show is built on getting celebrities to share personal stories that make your audience feel connected to us. That's literally the format. Don't pretend like this is some noble pursuit of truth. At least I'm honest about what I'm doing, Kelly fired back, her voice rising. At least I don't sit here pretending to be above the very industry that made me successful while simultaneously benefiting from it. The gloves were completely off now. Gloria sat forward, her eyes narrowing. What exactly are you trying to say, Kelly? I'm saying that you came on my show knowing exactly what kind of questions I ask. You've been doing interviews for decades. If you didn't want to talk about your life, then why did you agree to be here? Gloria's laugh was sharp and cold. Maybe I wanted to see if someone in this industry would finally have the courage to have a real conversation instead of just recycling the same tired talking points. And maybe, Kelly shot back, you're taking out whatever frustrations you have with the entertainment industry on me because it's easier than actually addressing the real issues. The audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front row looked like they wanted to leave, but were too shocked to move. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of this unprecedented meltdown. Gloria's voice dropped to a dangerously quiet level. Excuse me. Section 3. The breaking point. Gloria's hand remained raised, commanding absolute silence in the studio. Kelly sat frozen, clearly caught between wanting to defend herself and recognizing that she was no longer in control of her own show. The problem with this entire format, Gloria continued, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade, is that it treats human experiences like products to be consumed. You package someone's lowest moments, wrap them in inspirational language, and sell them to people who want to feel better about their own lives without actually doing any of the work. Kelly's face was flushed red now, and you could see her hands trembling slightly. Gloria, that's not what I do. I share stories because connection is important. Because when people see that others have struggled and survived, it gives them hope. Hope. Gloria's voice dripped with disdain. Kelly, what you're selling isn't hope. It's fantasy. You're telling people that if they just maintain a positive attitude and work hard enough, they can overcome anything. That's not hope. That's delusion. The audience was completely captivated by this verbal sparring match. Even though the discomfort in the room was palpable, this wasn't entertainment anymore. This was two successful women having a fundamental disagreement about the nature of their industry, and neither was backing down. Kelly's voice shook slightly as she responded. I have never told anyone that positive thinking solves everything. I've been very open about therapy, about medication, about the fact that some problems require professional help. But you still frame it all as a journey, don't you? Gloria pressed. Everything has to have meaning. Everything has to lead somewhere better. What about the people whose lives don't get better? What about the people who struggle forever? Where do they fit into your narrative? Kelly was quiet for a moment, clearly struggling to find a response. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know what you want me to say, Gloria. I want you to admit that this entire format is built on exploitation, Gloria said, her voice gaining strength. I want you to acknowledge that you make money off of other people's pain, and that all the inspirational messaging in the world doesn't change that fundamental fact. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Kelly stared at Gloria for several seconds, and you could practically see her internal struggle playing out on her face. Finally, she took a deep breath and sat up straighter in her chair. You're right, Kelly said quietly. You're absolutely right, and I hate that you're right. The admission seemed to catch even Gloria off guard. The fire in her eyes dimmed slightly, replaced by something that looked almost like surprise. Kelly continued, her voice growing stronger. I do make money off of other people's stories. We all do in this business. And yes, I wrap it all up in positive messaging because that's what people want to hear, and that's what gets ratings, and that's what pays everyone's salaries. The honesty of the moment was startling. The audience sat in stunned silence as Kelly continued her unexpected confession. But I also genuinely believe that sharing stories matters, Kelly went on. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm deluding myself, but I think there's value in people seeing that they're not alone in their struggles. Gloria studied Kelly carefully, as if seeing her for the first time. So, what do we do with that, Kelly? What do we do with the fact that connection requires a certain level of performance? I don't know, Kelly admitted. I honestly don't know, because you're right that it's exploitation, but you're also sitting here having agreed to be exploited. So, what does that make both of us? The question hit Gloria visibly. For the first time since the confrontation began, she seemed to pause and genuinely consider what Kelly was saying. Maybe, Gloria said slowly. It makes us both trapped in a system that we helped create but don't know how to escape from. Kelly nodded, and for a brief moment, it seemed like they might have found some common ground. But then, Gloria's expression hardened again. But that doesn't excuse the fact that you approached my story with the assumption that it needed to be inspirational, she said. You didn't ask me what I wanted to say about my experience. You came in with a predetermined narrative about strength and resilience. Kelly's face flushed again. You're right. I did, and I'm sorry for that. But Gloria, can I ask you something? What? What would you have preferred? I asked you. Gloria was quiet for a long moment, and the entire studio waited for her response. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than it had been since the interview began. I would have preferred you to ask me what I learned that I wished I hadn't learned, she said. I would have preferred you to ask me what I lost that I'll never get back. I would have preferred you to. Gloria paused at Kelly's desperate plea, her hand resting on the arm of the chair she had just vacated. The entire studio held its breath, waiting to see if she would sit back down or continue toward the exit. The kind of conversation I want to have, Gloria repeated, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Kelly, the kind of conversation I want to have can't happen on television. It can't happen with cameras rolling and an audience watching and producers timing segments. Kelly took a step closer, her voice pleading. Then tell me how we can make this right. Tell me what I should have done differently. You should have never invited me, Gloria said bluntly. If you really wanted to respect my experience, you should have left me alone to live my life without having to constantly explain it or justify it or turn it into a lesson for other people. The words hit Kelly like a physical blow. You could see her recoil slightly, the full weight of Gloria's message finally sinking in. But that's my job, Kelly said weakly. Interviewing people, getting them to share their stories. That's literally what I do for a living. I know, Gloria replied. And for the first time, there was something that sounded almost like pity in her voice. And that's the tragedy of all of this. You're trapped in a system that requires you to violate people's privacy and dignity, and you've convinced yourself that you're doing something noble. The audience was witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a celebrity meltdown or a publicity stunt gone wrong. This was a fundamental challenge to the entire structure of celebrity interview culture, and it was happening live on television. Kelly's voice broke slightly as she responded. So what am I supposed to do? Just stop doing interviews? Stop trying to connect with people? Maybe, Gloria said simply. Maybe that would be the most honest thing you could do. The suggestion hung in the air like a bomb that had just exploded. Kelly stared at Gloria, her mouth slightly open, clearly unable to process what she was hearing. You're asking me to give up my career, Kelly said finally. I'm asking you to examine whether your career is worth the cost, Gloria replied. To you and to everyone who sits in that chair. Kelly's hands clenched into fists at her sides. That's easy for you to say. You've already made your money. You've already established your legacy. Some of us are still trying to build something. Build something on what foundation, Kelly? Gloria's voice was sharp again. On the emotional labor of guests who feel obligated to share their most painful experiences because that's what your format demands. I never forced anyone to share anything, Kelly shot back, her defensive anger returning. Everyone who comes on this show knows what they're signing up for. Do they? Gloria challenged. Do they really understand that they're expected to turn their trauma into entertainment? Do they understand that their pain becomes a commodity the moment they sit down in that chair? Kelly was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. I don't know. That's the most honest thing you've said this entire interview, Gloria said, adjusting her jacket as if preparing to leave. The fact that you don't know, but you do it anyway. The studio was so quiet, you could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was watching this unprecedented confrontation, unsure whether they were witnessing something historic or something they shouldn't be seeing. Kelly made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Gloria, I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry if I made you feel exploited or disrespected. That was never my intention. Gloria turned back to look at Kelly one more time, and her expression was unreadable. Kelly, your intentions don't matter. The system you participate in causes harm regardless of your intentions. And until you're willing to acknowledge that and change it, nothing you say means anything. How am I supposed to change an entire system? Kelly asked, her voice cracking with emotion. You start by not participating in it, Gloria said simply. You start by saying no to the parts of your job that require you to extract pain from other people for entertainment. Kelly shook her head frantically. But that's the whole job. That's what people want. They want the personal stories. They want the emotional moments. If I don't give them that, they'll just go somewhere else. Then let them, Gloria said. And with those words, she took another step toward the exit. Let them go somewhere else to get their fix of other people's suffering. The finality in Gloria's voice was unmistakable. Kelly seemed to realize that nothing she could say would change Gloria's mind or repair the damage that had been done. So that's it. Kelly called after her. You're just going to leave. Gloria stopped walking and turned around one final time. Kelly, I came here thinking maybe we could have a real conversation. Instead, I got exactly what I always get. Someone trying to mine my experiences for content. So yes, I'm leaving. But we're live, Kelly said desperately. We're in the middle of a show. I know, Gloria replied. And there was something almost like a smile on her face. And maybe that's the most honest moment this show has ever had. With that, Gloria Estefan walked off the set of the Kelly Clarkson Show, leaving Kelly standing alone on stage in front of a stunned audience and rolling cameras. The silence stretched on for several seconds before Kelly finally turned to address the audience. Well, she said, her voice shaky, but attempting to maintain some semblance of professionalism. That was certainly not what any of us expected. The camera captured Kelly's face as she struggled to figure out how to end the segment, how to transition back to normal programming after what everyone had just witnessed. I guess, Kelly continued, clearly improvising. Sometimes interviews don't go the way we plan them. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's more honest than what we usually do here. She paused, looking directly into the camera. And for a moment, It seemed like she might be considering Gloria's words about the nature of her job and the entertainment industry as a whole. We'll be right back.